Good evening. This is an online legislative town hall event with your 22nd District legislators, Senator Jessica Bateman, Representative Beth Doglio, and Representative Lisa Parshley. We're going to be talking this evening about the big issues that your elected officials are going to be working on in this 60-day legislative session. My name is Alex, and I am a staff person here at the legislature who will be helping moderate this evening. We have about 24 questions that were submitted ahead of time, and we have staff monitoring the comments on YouTube and social media for questions you ask there. We'll begin with brief opening statements from each legislator. I'd like to invite each of you to tell us about one major issue before the legislature this year that you are motivated by, and one bill that you personally are sponsoring that you are excited to work on. Senator Bateman, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, everyone. Really happy to have all of you here to talk about this important legislative session. Jessica Bateman, State Senator for the 22nd Legislative District. I'm really excited to talk about revenue this year. We know that we have one of the most regressive tax systems in the country, and for years we've been trying to chip away at the edges to try to make it more sustainable, more equitable, and we have a number of bills this year that will hopefully address that. Some bills including a wealth tax, a millionaire's tax, and then also a large employer payroll tax. And I think that at this time of fiscal turbulence that we've had in the last couple of years, this is a really great opportunity for us, in spite of all that, to move forward with a sustainable budget. And I'm really excited about my independent living bill. So we have seniors in Washington State that live in 55 plus communities, and they are not protected by the same protections for individuals that are seniors living in assisted living or skilled nursing facilities. Those are licensed facilities, and as a result, they have extra protections. And with seniors being vulnerable, with our housing shortage, there's been examples in our community and across the state of people having their rights violated, including their tenant landlord rights and consumer protection rights. And so what this bill would do is it would create a registry, because we don't know how many there are in Washington, and we can track them. It would include a new independent ombudsperson, which would be an advocate for our seniors in these types of facilities to help them, be a resource to them, and also collect data in case we need to share that information with the Attorney General to actually hold them accountable.
Thank you. Representative Doglio, would you like to speak to some of the big issues before the legislature?
Sure. Well, welcome everyone. I am particularly excited about Indiana University, of which I'm an alum, and they're in the playoffs right now. I know none of you who are on this call are likely alumni and excited about the game, but I just wanted to say go IU, Indiana University. Okay, after that's done, I'm super excited about my colleagues' efforts to protect immigrants in this state and their rights. I want people in Washington to feel welcomed and protected, and we are continuing to work on legislation that continues to protect people's rights. Obviously, it is devastating from my perspective in terms of what's going on in our nation. It's citizens, it's people who are living here and trying to make a new life for themselves, who are here totally legally, and now it's folks who are trying to protect them that are also under siege right now. So for those of you who are doing that work, I really appreciate you being there for our community members, our neighbors, and I'm with you 100%. In terms of my own bill that I'm super excited about, I am trying to really make sure that ratepayers are protected as data center growth is predicted to really increase our need for electricity and energy in this state. And I want to make sure that we're protecting ratepayers, you, me, grandma, grandpa, while also protecting the reliability of our grid, making sure we're not going to experience blackouts as we potentially build out our grid to accommodate data centers. So I'm working on a bill to address many things pertaining to data centers as we look to the future and making sure that we all have affordable and reliable electricity.
Thank you. And Representative Parshley.
Wow, remind me never to go after these two. I agree with both of them. There's two major issues in my mind. One is protecting our immigrants, and it's just shameful what we're seeing in the country, in Portland, Minneapolis, you name it, Seattle. We heard about something that's going on up north with protesters being taken down to the ground and even arrested. We as a state need to work on that. And like Representative Doglio said, I want to work with my colleagues across the other chamber for the, not allowing people to wear face masks and making sure that if you impersonate a police officer, that's illegal. All of that, we have to do that to protect Washingtonians and be a role model for the rest of the country. I'm also super excited to hear for the first time the leadership of both chambers really seriously talking about progressive taxation and beginning to tackle this whole process. Not only this income tax on those that are making over $1 million per year, but also what does this mean in terms of all of our tax structure in the years to come? It's super exciting. I guess what I would like to highlight is a kind of a combination of two of my bills that go to AI and AI guardrails. I'm not against AI, but I believe we're rushing forward with this technology in a way that has no guardrails. My first one is a bill I entered last year, which is 1622, which would allow the state employees to be able to bargain if AI was impacting their salary or how they're evaluated. In the process of working on this bill, I found out something else that was a little bit concerning, that our own state agencies are using AI, cybersecurity, and mechanical means to evaluate, or shall we say, watch state employees, and they are not aware of it. So this gave birth to another bill, which is a simple bill, just saying that all employers, whether they're private or public, must notify the employees of these types of evaluations, especially if they're being used for personnel evaluation. And I'm hoping to get that one moving forward, because I think in this day and age of a lot of data capture, we should be aware of when we're being watched at work, and to keep our workplaces safe and know where and what stuff is being recorded on us during our work days. And then I'm just joining my fellow senators and House members, trying to make sure that we see a pathway forward in this turbulent time.
Thank you. We'll begin with some questions now, with some of the online questions that we had submitted ahead of time. We'll start with a question from Eleanor, who says she was part of starting Thurston County Gun Sense, and is asking if what comes next in terms of laws on gun responsibility in the legislature, and can we count on further action to happen on gun safety?
Yeah. Well, Eleanor, it's nice to hear from you as always. I've appreciated working with you on gun responsibility all of these years. I do have a gun bill that I'm really hoping to see move off the House floor this year and onto the Senate and onto the governor's desk, that deals with a very important issue of making sure we have safe storage of guns in vehicles. Stolen guns from vehicles is a leading cause of homicides, and this bill just requires that people store their guns so people can't see within their cars to actually steal it in the first place. So looking forward to getting that off of the floor soon, hopefully. And there are a number of other bills, but that is the one that I am tracking most closely. Perhaps Senator Bateman has a bill that's happening on the Senate side that she'd like to talk about. Or not.
Sure. Are you talking about the next question, not the, I don't have any gun bills. So I think the next question is on wasteful plastic.
Yeah, we had a question from Sylvia who wanted to ask about wasteful plastic at our stores, of plastic bags, styrofoam to-go food containers, and what's being done about this.
Great. Well, we have a bill that I think that she will be interested in, and this is building off the good work of Rep. Doglio, who's the chair of the Environment Committee in the House. And a couple years ago, we started the conversation around banning plastic bags in Washington. And at that time, thicker plastic bags were allowed. And the thought was that thicker plastic bags would be theoretically used more times. think they estimated 120 times, which actually ended up not being the case. They ended up being used as disposable bags, just like any other plastic bag. And the whole point of a plastic bag ban is to reduce plastics in our environment, in our oceans. We're finding microplastics, which plastic breaks down to tiny bits of plastic in our oceans and in people, in food, all kinds of places. So this new bill will actually ban all plastic bags outright. There's already a charge that's allowed. So retailers to charge for using one of the paper bags. You could also use your own tote bag or bring in your bag. And EBT users will be exempt from that charge for the affordability issues that we've heard about. Really excited about this bill. It was heard in the Senate Environment Committee the first week of session last week. And I think on the House side, the representative heard it last week as well.
Yeah, and just if I could jump in there, this is LD22 effort because both Senator Bateman and myself, and of course, Rep. Doglio, who has been doing a lot of the legwork on this, are bringing this bill forward. So it's a pride moment for LD22.
Great. The next question is live from the chat. It's about the legislation, the No Masks on Police bill, House Bill 2173, Senate Bill 5855. And they're asking for whether you plan to support those bills, assuming that they move forward.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We're all co-sponsors of that bill. I'm a co-sponsor in the Senate and very, very happy to see that bill moving forward.
All right, with that round of support, the next question we'd like to bring forward is about the budget generally. Lauren is asking, the state is once again facing budget challenges. What is the path forward for the operating budget in this session and years to come?
Well, it's rather bleak, unfortunately. I think there is no question that we are going to have to make cuts. And we are surgically continuing to go through the budget and look for places where we can make some cuts that will not impact services to our most vulnerable neighbors in Washington State. It's a very grueling process. Sitting on appropriations, we are not, it's a whole different way of legislating. Bills cannot have fiscal notes. So rather than sending things to rulemaking, for example, we're being very prescriptive, or I'm personally have been very prescriptive in my bills to avoid fiscal notes. We are seeing a little bit of increased revenue, which is really good news. We're also looking at some tax preferences going away. The data centers, where the governor did some changes in his bill in terms of incentive for data centers receive in our state. There are other things like that as well. And then we're, as both Rep. Bateman and Senator Bateman and Representative Parshley mentioned, we are indeed looking at a wealth tax and a payroll tax as options on the table. Unfortunately, those will be taken to court. They'll sue the state on that, and it will be quite some time before we can actually enact those bills. And so, in the next 2 to 4 years, we really do need to make some cuts and do our best to make sure that we're continuing those very basic services to Washingtonians in the state.
That was well said. Thank you, Rep. Doglio.
All right. The next one is, we actually had a couple questions about sort of having to do with data privacy and sort of combining those together. One of the issues that has happened here recently in the city of Olympia is around the flock camera system, and there is legislation introduced in both chambers around these license plate reader cameras. Can you tell us a little bit about your opinion about the flock cameras and license plate readers?
Well,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Just briefly, Senator Trudeau in the Senate has introduced a bill that provides reasonable regulations on automatic license plate readers. This hopefully will set a statewide standard. We've had the utilization of that used differently with different cities. Olympia is a great example of immediately not taking them down, but I think they covered them so that they wouldn't be used by federal immigration authorities. So this bill, I'm a co-sponsor of on the Senate side. I'm not sure if you all have a companion on your side, or Parshley.
I'm not certain of that, but there were several AI bills and data bills coming out of the AI work group that we have over there, and including my bill, which is looking at how we're using surveillance and data. And I applaud Olympia for taking a bold step and saying this isn't right for our city.
All right. We will next go to a submitted question from Jennifer. I'm concerned about the Federal Health and Human Services changing access for vaccines. How can we make sure that we have science making these decisions for Washington?
Well, we just heard, and I've forgotten the bill number. We've had a lot of bill numbers dropped in, but we just heard a bill that was a governor request, which would help us build that 3-state vaccine panel and assessment between Washington, Oregon, and California. And the bill essentially is going to mandate our Department of Health to be able to do the recommendations for our state and for our insurance companies and our public employee insurances. And that's going to be based on best sciences and standard of care from actual doctors, unlike what we're seeing at the FDA and CDC panels for vaccines, where we don't even have best standards and best science. So we're going to be allowing our Department of Health to do that, which is also going to be allowing us to work with Oregon and California on this 3-state mandate on how we deal with vaccines and the recommendations to pediatricians, family practitioners, internal medicine specialists, and hospitalists. It's a very good thing for us to be doing. It's sad that we have to do that, and our federal government is abdicating from that role.
All right, and next we have a live question from the chat for Senator Bateman about SB 6016, a bill you sponsored having to do with growth in urban growth areas. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill?
Thank you for that. So I'm on the local government committee, and I'm also chair of the housing committee. And many of the bills that come before both those committees relate to the Growth Management Act. And one of my cities that we represent here they have an issue with how land swapping can happen. So we have passed laws in Washington state that allow cities within their urban growth areas. Typically, you have to maintain your population growth within the urban growth area for good reason. The Growth Management Act stipulates that. We want to make sure that we're having development occur within cities where infrastructure is already taking place. It's much more cost effective. It also prevents sprawl, prevents building on rural lands, and preserves ecosystems and forests, et cetera. But there have been laws that have passed in the last couple of years that allow for what we call UGA swaps, so an urban growth swap. And there are very strict parameters around when you can do a UGA swap. Senator Short from a number of years ago passed legislation related to this, and we've had a number of bills proposed that haven't passed. What my bill does is it creates an alignment between how we treat legally a UGA swap that happens in an annual amendment process within the comprehensive plan and at the 10-year comp plan process. We exempt CARAs, critical aquifer recharge areas, in one, but not the other, excuse me. So the bill simply clarifies that we treat them equitably and the same in both circumstances, which makes sense from a legal perspective. The Department of Commerce agrees, the city agrees, everyone agrees. There is also a project that also happens to be happening, is proposed to happen in the city of Tumwater that would be impacted by the result of this bill. However, this bill is about statewide consistency. We did have some input during the public hearing about the two RCWs that were different, and I'm working to make sure that there is consistency and clarification. That's the whole intent of the bill. If people have comments or concerns about any specific land use proposal being proposed in a city, the local city government is where you make those comments and your voice is heard on that specific issue, because they're the ones that have the authority to determine if in fact they are going to move forward with a proposed UGA swap. I will say that critical aquifer recharge areas are everywhere, and we've exempted them in many other pieces of legislation. My landmark middle housing bill, for example, we exempted them from the bill itself, because you can't build anywhere if you can't build on CARAs, because they are everywhere. They are different from other critical areas. So if people have additional comments or questions, they can contact me, or if they have concerns about a specific land use proposal, they can talk to their city council members.
All right. And our next question is also live from the chat from Nina, who is hoping to hear about Evergreen State College and how can we make sure that Evergreen State College gets funding in the budget.
Well, I think you're doing a terrific job, Nina. It's great to hear from you. I did just meet a development associate from from Evergreen at the IU game where I was watching prior to this, Enrique. So I know you have great development people at Evergreen. He seemed awesome. We're working hard, to make sure that Evergreen maintains their funding, and I think you did a tremendous and alumni from Evergreen did a tremendous job over the interim, really making your case with the governor. We saw good results from that in the governor's budget, and so we're going to try and hold the line on that and work with you to do that.
Thank you. And our next question is one that was submitted ahead of time from Pat, who is hoping to hear about your views on a fire benefit charge in Olympia and what's going on with there and how the legislature might be involved.
Well, there is a bill that has been put in by Representative Stevie, and it would propose that the fire benefit charge would be available for cities based on council action or vote. And if Pat Cole will remember, the reason the city of Olympia and the city of Tumwater were considering this had to do with financial reasons. And we can debate all we want about the need for fire districts and fire benefit charge. But the simple fact is cities that have municipal fire departments are having to fund their fire departments while public works, while parks, while the police department, while we're dealing with housing and homelessness and climate change and all the other issues that are facing our cities. As a matter of fact, when we in Olympia faced the Regional Fire Authority question, we were proposing to hire 18 firefighters for a basic life support transport. Well, the city of Olympia can no longer afford the 18. We are only going to be able to afford the 9. So every city that is facing this needs to find a way to provide adequate fire service and emergency response to their people. That's not trying to do a Hunger Games with the police department, the public works. Is a fire benefit charge like we were looking at for Olympia back a couple years ago perfect? Absolutely not. Is this bill perfect? No, but I am working with Rep. Stevie because I learned a lot of things, some of them from you, Pat, about how to make this better if a city is going to approach this. But the simple fact is, with all the cities in this Washington state under serious budget trouble and counties, we have to look in a reality check about how we're going to do public safety and fire fighting budgeting for these cities. They're in trouble and they're drowning.
Thank you. Our next question is another one live from the chat. Do you support legislation on distributing mifepristone pills that were purchased by the state and are now being held in a warehouse?
Hi, thank you for that question. That's my bill that I'm sponsoring. So a little context. In my first term in the House during the previous Trump administration, the Governor Inslee at the time, and the Attorney General were very astute and predicted that there could be a court case challenging the efficacy of mifepristone, despite all of the health data that tells us for decades it's been used safely and effectively. Mifepristone is the primary medication that people utilize. It's one of the 2 medications utilized for medication abortion, and it's the primary form of abortion in our state right now. And at that time, there was a court case coming before a court in Texas. And so what we did was I sponsored a bill back then that authorized the Department of Corrections, because they have a pharmacy license, to purchase 3 years of mifepristone in anticipation that then FDA would call the question and not distribute that medication. And that went through court process. We passed the bill, and the medication did not get frozen. It's still being accessed. And at the same time, we have this medication that we purchased and stockpiled for that potential event, and it's about to expire. And so I've introduced a bill that will authorize the distribution of those medications to healthcare providers in Washington to ensure that they are able to be utilized for individuals that need them. And I am hoping that we can get that bill passed this year.
Thank you. And our next question is another one that has some budget implications. This was a question submitted ahead of time. How is Washington preparing for the possibility that we could have our federal funding reduced by the federal government by some amount or even to nothing? Can one of you speak to that?
Yes, Senator Manka Dhingra has put forward a bill that I was aware of, and we are working to see if that may come forth in the House as a companion. But basically, it is saying in this bill that should the federal government not pay either grants that are already awarded and due, or lawsuits that are won and there's a monetary award, if the federal government is not paying the state of Washington, that we will withhold equal amount of money. That is sort of at a very high level what that bill will do. I support that, but the question is, can we actually enact that? Because there's federal preeminence in a lot of this. But there is a consideration, and we are looking at the potential, especially in a state like Washington, where we pay more federal money to the Washington, D.C. than we get in return, especially in light of H.R. 1 and the loss of food, SNAP, and other supports, including wildfire support and other NOAA, you name it, the EPA, CDC, we talked about that earlier with the vaccines. So yes, there is some action on that, and we are not alone. New York, Maryland, Connecticut, Wisconsin, Illinois are also looking at bills such as this, because most of us are paying more than we get back from the federal government.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to move on to another question that we had live from the chat. This is in sort of summary around what can we do to support a sustainable vision in Thurston County in the face of developers who want to expand out in rural areas?
Can you repeat that question?
What can we do about sprawl out into rural areas of Thurston County?
I mean, it's a pretty, I would, for whoever asked this question, please feel free to contact my office, because I'm curious if you have examples that you could help me walk through with me. We have the Washington State Growth Management Act, which has very strict stipulations for where growth can occur, where it can occur. And so all 3 cities that are in Thurston County in the 22nd legislative district are focusing their growth within their boundaries. And if there are efforts to, you know, I know one of the issues that's come up over the years is the cost of development in the county being cheaper. And so you see more pressure and more drive by individuals to build in our more rural areas. But there are pretty strict constraints on what they can build, how much per acre, or like the density requirements. So that's why we focus so much of our attention on increasing density within our cities, and bills like legalizing middle housing, legalizing accessory dwelling units, co-living spaces, all these things that cities have made illegal for so many years, decades, because we want to see that growth happen within cities. So if you have a specific thing that you want to talk about, I'm happy to walk through that as a local government committee member.
Thank you. And we've had questions in the live chat for Representative Parshley about nuclear power. Can you talk a little bit about this particular issue?
Yes, I believe the person is referring to me signing onto a resolution, not a bill, that supports the potential for small nuclear modules and potentially a site in Eastern Washington. The simple fact is we don't have enough energy production. We just don't. And could we generate all green energy? I would be 100% for that. Hydro, wind, solar, hydrogen, green hydrogen, I should say. If we could find the possibility to do that, I would be 100% behind that. But every time we watch a 30-second video on our cell phone, it's the same amount of energy as it is to charge your entire cell phone. And the simple fact is our energy uses are not going down, they're going up. We talked about data centers. We have to find as many different carbon neutral, if possible, sources of energy and build like crazy wind and solar. But we have a federal government who just canceled a large wind farm that was already purchased. The blades were sitting in the dock. We have to look at everything. And yes, I agree with the person who just commented, it's expensive. I absolutely agree. It is not the answer. But if we have a private partnership that wants to build it, then like Amazon or somebody else to help with the data centers they are going to need, as long as it can be done safely, yes, it's not going to increase our carbon footprint in terms of fossil fuel burning, natural gas, biogas. I am for it. And I don't think we should be turning down anything at this point because we simply don't have enough energy production capability. And we have dams that are potentially going to be risked of being taken out for the salmon runs. And we have aging dams that are not generating as much as we need. We need to look at things like Douglas County is working on generating hydrogen when their dam is excess capacity. And we need to be looking at it all. It's a yes-and situation because, quite frankly, we're not generating enough energy. And then lastly, to go to Representative Doglio, we also have to start looking at transmission. We don't have enough capacity and new capacity of energy transmission. So that was a resolution. It was not a bill. I'm not pushing it. It's expensive, but it's also something, if it came, we can't turn it down. We don't have the energy generation at this moment.
All right. And we have another live question from the chat about how can we tie streamlining of permitting to making sure that we still adequately protect the environment and low-income housing?
I'll take this one. So as chair of the Housing Committee, I can report that we've been working on quite a few bills over the last couple years on housing that relate to this question. This year, I know that there is a permitting streamlining bill by Representative Dewar, chair of the local government committee, that I'm hoping we'll see come over here to the Senate. What we've been working on is streamlining the permitting process to hopefully make that more less time intensive. We have laws in Washington telling cities that they have to process permits in a certain time frame, and the average is 6 months to 18 months, and it's really, really disproportionate, and it's not helping us when we try to address our housing shortage by building more homes. We need 1 million homes to be built over the next 20 years. We need half of them to be affordable at 0 to 50% area median income, which is considered very affordable housing, generally subsidized by either the local government or the state government. So we're in a real pinch with trying to address that. I would note that since 1986, when we passed the Housing Trust Fund, when we created the Housing Trust Fund, which is our bucket of funds to build affordable housing in Washington, we have built about 65,000 affordable homes, and we need 500,000 in the next 20 years. So 65,000 since 1986 that we built. and we need 500,000. So we definitely need to rapidly increase our construction of housing, which is why the legislature is focused on legalizing diverse housing options. Like I said before, middle housing, accessory dwelling units, co-living spaces. Those are all more environmentally friendly forms of housing. All those bills involve allowing that to be built in cities, which is the most viable and the most efficient place where we want housing to occur and per the Growth Management Act. So I would say that we're working to address housing by making it easier to build where it is appropriate and thinking really smartly about the types of homes that we're allowing. Middle housing, a brand new construction is more affordable if you're purchasing a condo in 1/4 of that home versus brand new construction, which in our community is $600,000. And in Seattle, you're looking at the median home price of $900,000. People simply cannot afford that. So we have to figure out how to do all of those things. And we've had quite a few bills working on all of them.
All right, and we have a couple AI questions, and so I'll kind of ask a couple AI questions at once, and maybe a couple of you can speak to this. But one is about how should the state legislate around AI tools to protect children and youth without stifling access to beneficial educational tools? And then there's also some folks who have concerns about the environmental impacts of the growing number of data centers and how that intersects with water and environment and our electrical grid. So thinking about AI and data centers on those sort of two prongs about AI and children and youth, and then AI and in the environment and electricity. Would some of you like to speak to that?
I'm happy to take the second one. I do have a bill, I think it's 2515, that addresses many of the issues that constituents have brought to me, concerns about water use, water effluent, energy use of data centers. The bill does require transparency. If we are able to pass that bill, it would be the first state in the nation that has been successful in requiring transparency around the use of water, effluent, and energy in the nation. It also seeks to make sure that consumer-owned utilities as well as investor-owned utilities hold the data centers responsible for all costs, transmission, infrastructure upgrades, and allows them to charge them a higher rate so that there is not a cost shift to ratepayers, as I mentioned in the beginning of this session. So that's just a few of the elements in the bill. Currently, the bill also requires a stronger clean energy requirement than what our current laws, which are actually quite ambitious as they are. Our Clean Energy Transformation Act, it actually requires data centers to meet some of those conditions prior to when they would have to otherwise. So 2035 has to be 100% clean energy before 2045. It's a big lift in a short session. It's a new bill. But I am working a lot on it. So anyway, the hearing is Thursday morning at 8 a.m. if you'd like to tune in.
I'm so excited about that bill, Rep. Doglio. Thank you so much for sponsoring it. I have a small AI bill on the healthcare committee, and it just states that we're seeing an increase in chatbots and AI being used for things like nurse lines, and you can like chat with what you think might be a person but is actually a chatbot. And so what this would do is it would say healthcare companies can still do that, but they have to explicitly state that you're not talking to a human. That way we know if we're talking to a nurse. So the law actually says a nurse is a human being, and it would require that disclosure if you are chatting with someone that is AI. And we're seeing a lot of AI bills this session and the last couple sessions, and I do anticipate that that will continue. It's like every year we're seeing it kind of within our systems, it's growing more and more. So I think that we're going to continue seeing legislation like this. And I think Rep. Parshley had worked on an AI bill as well.
Yes, I mentioned it briefly in the beginning. It's a bill for the Washington State employees, which is essentially the high-risk AI, which is an AI that can come in and replace employees or provide evaluation of employees. At this moment, without generative AI, AI can only work based on the math equation you give it to begin with. So if you're performing an evaluation of an employee, you have to pick your perfect employee. So is it a 40-year-old white male? Anyone who's not a 40-year-old white male will not get the perfect evaluation. And you may ask, does that really happen? Yes. United Healthcare said all insurance claims are suspect. And for 6 months, they denied 90% of their insurance claims. The state of Texas put in AI for evaluating whether someone gets services through their DSHS department. And now they're in a large class action suit because they deny 90% of the people seeking services. The state of Maryland is looking at using AI to distribute the limited SNAP benefits that they're going to be given. I think we're jumping really quickly into replacing people. And the bottom line for 1622 is let's get the people that would use the AI, that knows what kind of AI is best, at the table before we institute AI. And that's what 1622 is. The people that are actually doing the work. The private industries that have done this bargaining are actually instituting more AI faster than the state is, because the people that use it are tailoring what kind of AI comes in. And that's my bill 1622. Now, we also have House Bill 2225, which is going after chatbots that chat with teenagers. And a lot of us will remember that the reports of chatbots that have supported teenagers committing suicide. And this bill is going to go after that and address that. And we just need to keep looking at it, despite the president putting in an executive order that states cannot regulate AI. Right now, based on our own Attorney General's office, that unless Congress actually enacts that, the state should keep going and trying to put in guardrails for AI at this point. And that's where we're generally standing.
Thank you. And another question. In light of the federal cuts and increased regulations to SNAP benefits, what is the supplemental nutrition benefits? What is the state doing to address food security?
A lot of things. We are working to make sure, I think we're on the hook for $155 million to ensure that the hole that the federal government is leaving in SNAP is filled. We're also working to change our systems, unfortunately having to invest more money in our IT systems to manage the changes that have occurred at the federal level in terms of how people are able to access those benefits. So all of that is accounted for in the governor's budget. And then I'm just going to give a great shout out to Representative Christine Reeves, who chairs the Agner Committee, who is putting together some fantastic bills around, a state farm bill. And Representative Daria Farvar is doing some great work around groceries, including the possibility of having a state-funded grocery where we have food deserts. So lots of really, really exciting happening in that space in the House. I'm not sure what's going on in the Senate, but we have some legislators who are taking some real leadership in that space.
Thank you. And the next one is a question that was submitted ahead of time through the email form. And this is, all three of you are Democrats. How are you working to make sure that your Republican constituents feel represented?
Yeah, I'll take that question. I think all three of us are elected to represent the district, which encompasses not only Republicans and Democrats, but individuals who identify in other ways as well. And I go and meet with people that request time with me. I go to groups and organizations, everything from Kiwanis to Rotary, Chambers of Commerce, my local delegation, hospitals, nursing homes. I go to a lot of different places, talk to students, and I'm more than willing to talk to any of my constituents. I think it's important, especially in these times when we have so much rhetoric that's on social media and in the news, that we have face-to-face conversations. I've had meetings with constituents that come into my office a little frustrated, perhaps, with some of my bills that I've worked on or things that they think are my values. And I'm more than willing to have a conversation to hear them out and to listen. And at the end, when, I get to hear them out, they get to hear what my thought process is and how I think about things. And that generally helps a person feel like they can understand my perspective and I can understand theirs. So while we might not always agree on the policy solution, I value greatly hearing from constituents about issues that affect them. A lot of the times, the things that come before all of us in our delegation are people being directly affected, either in their jobs, in their personal lives, or out in the community. You all have information that we don't. And so it's really important that we get that. Our doors are always open. And so please feel open to coming and talking with us. I always encourage, sessions kind of hard because we're focused on all the bills that come before us. So during the interim is also a really good time when things are slower. We can talk about a bigger, more broad set of issues, but please do get in touch.
Thank you. And one of the issues that I believe all of you touched on in the opening statements very briefly, but we've seen some more conversation about in the chat, and that we got some questions ahead of time on as well, is around new revenue. Can you speak a little bit about whether there are any plans to raise new revenue this session?
Well,
I think.
Sorry. Well, we all heard about the income tax, which is 9.9% on anyone making over $1 million. We have HB 2100, which is the payroll tax. And as a matter of fact, I just spoke to Rep. Scott tonight about some adjustments that we might want to make on that, which is lifting up the amount of salary from 125 to the equivalent of Social Security, where companies are no longer required to take any extra out of the payroll, which I believe is roughly around 170,000. So we are looking at these types of very progressive revenue streams. But as Senator Bateman said in the beginning, these are not going to be providing revenue right away. Some of the options that we're looking at, and would I love to go back to the wealth tax we were talking about, the $50 million intangibles? Absolutely. But I'm not sure we have a governor that will actually sign that into law at this point. There are some smaller ones coming about. There's a tobacco tax being talked about because the state of Washington spends $3.2 billion a year on tobacco-related illnesses and diseases. So tobacco tax is one way to help offset some of the healthcare costs in the Apple Care. We're also looking at an insurance premium tax increase with language that would prevent pass-through to the insurance policy holders. And some of that money could go back into healthcare such as gender-affirming care, abortion services, and other potentially at-risk Medicaid and Medicare and subsidies for those who might lose their HCA subsidized insurance. So there are some that are coming through. I will have to wait and see what the end of the session brings us in terms of the full revenue package, because it can't just be what cuts and sweeping capital budget funds at this point.
And I would just add, last year, a lot's been said about the tax package that passed last year. We had $6 billion worth of cuts last year, in addition to the revenue that was created. So last year was a mix of making cuts and increasing revenue. I would say last year's set of revenue proposals that we had were not the optimal ones for me as a legislator. I supported the truly progressive forms of new types of revenue, like a wealth tax. We didn't see that pass last year, but now we have actual progressive revenue options on the table: a millionaire's tax on income over $1 million, a wealth tax, and a large employer payroll tax. We don't know which are any of those that will actually pass this year, but all of those put us on a better footing. We're one of only 7 states that doesn't have an income tax, and that puts us in a perpetual position of having to address our lack of revenue. And when it comes to revenue, whatever we do this year, we're very invested on the Senate side, I know at least, of giving back, so helping reduce the tax burden on Washingtonians. We know that in Washington, the lowest income families spend 13.8% of their income, their family's income, in taxes. The top 1% spend 4.1%. So that's the disproportionality that we're dealing with. Whether that's a B&O tax reduction, that's something that's been talked about by Senator Frame for years. We don't know what solutions will be in there, but we know that we need to do things like fund working families' child connections to make sure that working families have access to childcare. I'd love to see universal childcare. We have to get there through progressive revenue. That's the only way that we can actually do that. And I think, this is actually a time, I can't believe that in the 11 years that I've been an elected official, that we're actually talking about being able to pass a millionaire's tax. It's a really incredible opportunity, and it will take a lot of support from constituents in our district. I know we have a lot of support for that. And if you have concerns as well, please, talk to us.
I just wish I had an opportunity to pay it.
Thank you. Our next question is, and I think this one might be for Representative Doglio. PFAS are in everything! Exclamation point. I loved how this one was written. Are we doomed? Representative, can you tell us a little bit about PFAS?
Well, PFAS is just one of many, 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 many toxic chemicals that are in our in everything. The microplastics, PFAS, 6-PPDQ, which we had a good hearing on today. That's in tires that kills fish. I would say, we are lucky in this state. We probably have one of the most comprehensive programs dealing with toxic chemicals. It's called the Safer Products Program that the Department of Ecology administers. It looks at certain classes of chemicals every 5 years. And with PFAS, we actually did a bill a couple of years ago that put PFAS into the queue sooner than it would have otherwise been considered. And so there is a tremendous amount of work looking at PFAS and what products we could actually, where there is an alternative product that could be used successfully to basically ban PFAS in those products or ban the product altogether. So we're trying to make headway through that process. I will say many, many municipal water systems. I know here in Thurston County, I just talked to the Thurston County PUD that's got some water systems that are putting in very costly systems to try and remove the PFAS from the water tables. And so we are continuing to work on it. It is one issue where I think there is a tremendous amount of bipartisan support and hope that we can continue to see some funding from the federal level to address the issue because it is very significant. But I don't think, I couldn't do this work if I thought I was doomed. And so I try to keep an optimistic attitude that we can come together across the aisle to address issues like this that are super, super challenging and also potentially very costly.
And I did put in a bill on PFAS in agriculture and looking at the impact of PFAS found in insecticides and herbicides. So we'll be hearing that in ag, and the bill is HB 2279.
Thank you. And our next question is another one live from the chat. How do you plan to protect the queer and transgender community considering what is happening on the federal level, particularly among communities of color?
Wow, that's an excellent question, and it's been on my mind. What I can tell you is that tax I just told you about, the premium insurance tax increase, we have already earmarked permanent revenue stream for gender affirming care in the state of Washington. This actually was a request from Senator Peterson, and we are working very hard, and I've worked with Rep. Macri that we're going to have that stream set in the operating budget for the state of Washington. We need to go much further and honor cities like Olympia that has a sanctuary status for reproductive and trans and LGBTQ. And we need to make sure that we do this statewide and we look at our Keep Washington Working, not just about people who are here as immigrants and undocumented, but all of it. because they are under attack from our federal government. Just bottom line.
All right. Well, we just have a few minutes left, so I'm going to turn it over to each legislator to do about a 1-minute closing statement. If we weren't able to get to your question, please feel free to send your legislators an email. Each legislator can be reached at their first name dot last name at leg.wa.gov, first name dot last name at leg.wa.gov. And for just a brief closing statements, we'll begin with you, Senator Bateman.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us online for this town hall. In these times, which can be very, very dark and divisive, it's so important for us to come together as a community and to be strong and to be resilient. And that means being engaged and getting involved, supporting your neighbors, and having things like this where we're actually talking about the issues that are before us. I know that I'm really proud of the work that we're introducing this session to respond to these threats that we're experiencing and these challenges that people are facing in our district and across the state. Things like addressing our wealth inequality in Washington, protecting immigrants, individuals that are transgender. We have a lot of solutions, but those all require you coming in and showing up, whether that's signing into a bill or sending us a note. So thank you for your engagement, and we look forward to hearing more from you as we move on towards the end of session. And I think we'll be having a live town hall at some point as well.
All right, and Representative Doglio?
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and engaging with democracy today. I hope that democracy is alive and well here in Washington State. I think it is, and I didn't talk much about our voter protection bills that we're planning on doing this year, but want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to vote and that they don't feel threatened in any way in doing that. That's another big part of what we are doing, and just really appreciate all the questions and the thought behind some of them. And my office has an open door. If you'd like to come talk, let's do that.
And Representative Parshley?
Thank you. To echo my seatmates, I really appreciate this type of democracy. And I was following along in the chat, and I saw some of the questions we were not able to get to. And I too have an open door policy, and I like hearing from people. We won't always agree, but this is how we move ourselves forward, having good discussions, sharing ideas. And that's how this government works. I watch it in action when we go into the caucus room. I watch it in action when we're working across the aisle. It's how democracy works. And I think, honestly, how we're going to get through this next 3 years is by looking at the people. The people give me hope. I have hope because I see local governments in action. I see people showing up in protests on the front step. I see questions in the chat, and I see the engagement in our work as legislators, with people emailing us, coming to our office, and catching us in the hallways. So please don't stop doing that, because that's how we're going to save the United States. That's how we're going to save our democracy. And I will talk to anyone about any of these issues. Just reach out.
Thank you. And with that, we will be ending tonight's online town hall. There will be contact information for each legislator. There should be contact information for each legislator up on the screen as this closes. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Okay.